Here we go.
All right.
I can hear.
You can hear? Everybody can hear? Everybody's good for story time?
Tap you if story time needs something to comment on.
I can hear you as long as you can hear me.
I can hear you. We are back today for part 2 of Israel Keys, but before we get started, while we understand that some individuals listen for the entertainment aspect of true crime, it's important to remember that these are real people with families and friends who may still be suffering from their loss. These stories are not meant to open old wounds or cause further emotional damage to those involved. We remind you to please be respectful, do not dox or contact those involved with cases. The cases discussed in this podcast may be disturbing to some listeners, and listener discretion is advised. Trigger warnings for this episode include sexual assault, minors, and animal abuse, I believe, is when we were getting started with this.
Okay.
So, Keys stood by his vehicle as Officer Henry ran plates, making sure that the car wasn't possibly linked to other traffic violations or crimes. The report was clean, not even a speeding ticket. Keys, at this point, seemed to be getting a little frustrated and asked the officer what the stop and the removal from his vehicle was about. To which Henry clearly responds that they're looking for someone that's been kidnapped from Alaska. Keys stated that he'd been in town for his sister's wedding. He'd been staying mostly in Wells, but decided to stay the night with his brother at the Quality Inn the night before. Keys then goes into explaining that his brothers are from Maine and they're also in town for the wedding. To which Henry takes the mental note that most individuals with some law enforcement training might find. That's a lot of unrelated information and unsolicited information to the topic given, which is a key tell that somebody isn't being honest. Henry then asked when Keys had gotten into town. Keys responded that he could only get a plane ticket out of Anchorage to Las Vegas. So he would either have to catch a flight there or he could drive. He made the side comment of how he wanted to show his daughter the Grand Canyon, so they rented a car and drove to Texas from Las Vegas, taking I-40. The two of them arrived in Texas the previous Thursday. Henry then asked Keys about his daughter's whereabouts.
I thought we were going to discuss how he got from Las Vegas to Wilcox. Our ideology.
Well, I mean, we can, but I would say later.
Why? We'll forget about it then.
Because he hasn't even
We
been
know
arrested
how you
yet.
work. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong.
Okay. We speculate, and I should lean forward, we speculate that Keys came down probably the 93-95, which goes into Kingman, because he made a mention that he stopped at the Hoover Dam, or spent the night there with the daughter. And so he would have come down that way, and probably on down into Phoenix from that way, dropping from Phoenix down to the 10, and then the 10 crossed over to Wilcox.
Yeah, he took like the 93 over to Phoenix, and then from there dropped down to the 10 and went across to Wilcox.
Well, technically the 93 ends at the 60, and then you take the 60
you
down.
take the 60 down to the 10.
Yeah, so, because you just did that the other day.
Yeah, I did.
So, Katie's like, oh my god, he came through Havasu. I'm like, no, nobody comes through Havasu purposely.
I mean, he could have. It's...
If he wanted to show her the London Bridge, but...
Yeah. And if she was awake during that time.
Exactly. And that's one of those things he'd have to have prior knowledge of the, everybody knows where the London Bridge is, but,
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. Could have happened, probably didn't.
Yeah, most likely didn't, but could have happened. Also, the fucking boot scoop booty that my fucking microphone just did, I apologize for. Because we were both sharing a mic. So Henry then asked Keys about his daughter's whereabouts, to which Keys said that she was in town with his brother, going onwards to say that she's 10 years old. And he needed to call his brother and notify him of what was going on. Around this time, Rayburn and Ganaway arrive on the scene. Keys took notice and asked Rayburn, does this have anything to do with the officer that drove through the parking lot last night?
Oh.
Rayburn knew nothing of this encounter and ignored the question, deciding to respond with one of his own. Did you stay at the Quality Inn last night? Keys responded with, yeah, but the room is in his name. I've been in and out the last 2 days. So, according to records from the FBI vault, the name on the room was registered to one Elijah Keyes. We're presuming that this is his brother, but it may have been an alias too.
Yeah.
Rayburn then asked when the car was rented. Keyes said last Thursday, the day he and his daughter flew into Vegas. Ganaway at this point was beginning to walk around the vehicle, casing it a little bit. She'd looked into some windows and basically was looking for any other identifying details on the car itself. She then follows up Rayburn's question with, "How many states did you stop in, and how many days?" According to Keyes, he'd stopped only at the Hoover Dam, and only for about an hour and a half at night for him to get some sleep before continuing. Ganaway then asked how he paid for gas. Keyes responded with, "I don't know, probably cash." To which Ganaway asked again, "How did you pay for gas?" Keyes responded with a more frustrated tone, "Probably cash." Now, Rayburn, who had been watching this exchange, took this as an opportunity to ask Keyes for his wallet to verify his story that cash was being used. To this, Keyes became taken aback and responds with, "You guys aren't searching anything. Am I under arrest?" Meanwhile, in Alaska, Payne and his team are waiting for any possible news from the lower 48 having to do with their suspect. Payne is going through the morning routine many individuals do at 8 a.m. on Monday morning. He's currently at another coffee kiosk called Sugar Shack getting his skinny mocha. Now, if you're a regular coffee addict like myself, and sometimes you don't want to make that additional little stop in your busy schedule at home, you find yourself regularly visiting coffee shops and becoming a regular. Over time, you become familiar with your baristas, and basically, trust me, as an ex-barista, we get to know you too. These were the thoughts that were going through Payne's head that morning. He knew most of the girls that worked with her, as did his wife. These girls had prospects of going to college or were already attending. Any of these girls could have been Samantha that night. Payne, still waiting for his drink, gets a call from an unknown number and decides to answer. It's Agent Ganaway, who introduces herself and notifies him that they've just pulled over a person of interest in his case. Ganaway then informs Payne what we've already just ran through to catch him up. Then notes in addition that she spotted a pair of white shoes in the car and a wad of cash that was rubber banded with red ink spattered across it. This is the type of spatter and ink rigging explosive that you would see in regards to bank robbery. Additionally, there are some maps in the vehicle with highlighted spots. Ganaway then asked Payne what he would like to do, as Keyes is becoming more uncooperative and agitated by the ration of questions he's being asked for a routine traffic stop. Payne isn't fully sure of what to do at this point, since there isn't much evidence pointing to this being their guy other than his Alaskan residency and questionable background story. Additionally, at this time, Texas has an exemption to probable cause. So when it comes to searching a vehicle, there needs to be some belief that there is a crime being committed. This means that Payne has to make an unquestionable decision, or they're going to all be in trouble. His response to Ganaway was, "I don't want to cut this guy loose without searching this car. It doesn't matter to me how you do it." And he hung up. 20 long, anxiety-filled minutes went by when Payne's phone rang again. "We got him. This is your guy," Ganaway announced. And when asked what they found, she told them, "Enough." A background check was conducted by Bell and Dahl to see if there were any previous criminal records for Mr. Keyes. There was nothing, which was surprising to say the least. A man with such a unique name and no criminal record whatsoever. Kat followed up with a more thorough background check, but still, there was nothing, not even a speeding ticket. By 9:30 a.m., Bell, a special assignment unit, and SWAT were lined up outside of the Keyes' residence, waiting to have the go-ahead to search the house from Dahl, who was currently writing up and clearing the search warrant. Outside of the property, there were 2 sheds, and just parked in front of them was a white Chevy pickup truck with the name Keyes Construction on the side. Another unit went to go pick up Keyes' girlfriend from her job at the hospital for questioning. Now, I'm going to leave her name out of this as much as I can, just out of respect for her privacy. She was shocked to learn of Keyes' suspected involvement with the Samantha Koenig case. More so, the house that she shared with Keyes and his daughter was currently going to be searched. Dahl started by asking about Keyes' whereabouts that evening. Keyes' girlfriend stated that he was home with her and his daughter. That night, she remembered him coming in and out of the bedroom several times until about 5 a.m. when he went to wake up his daughter. They were supposed to be heading on a trip that morning, and they had to be up early to catch their flight. She then went forward to say how she was going to meet them in a few days down in New Orleans for a cruise they all planned on going on. She then states that there's no way that Keyes is responsible or could have possibly done this. Back in Texas, Ganaway and Rayburn prepared to interrogate Keyes. They'd stop to get some food along the way, picking up a sandwich for themselves and for Keyes, hoping to gain some rapport with him. They entered the interrogation room at 3:30 as Henry and a couple other rangers stood behind a 2-way mirror observing the conversation. Ganaway offered Keyes his sandwich, but he simply eyed it and didn't say anything, making the first attempt of gaining rapport a bad one. Rayburn led the questioning, asking Keyes if he knew why he was under arrest, to which Keyes said, "I don't think so." Rayburn followed up with this, stating they'd found Dwayne's ATM card in his wallet. Keyes didn't even flinch before stating that he didn't want to talk. This didn't exactly close the door to questioning because Keyes didn't say the magical phrase, "I want a lawyer." Rayburn decided to press a little bit more and stated, "The FBI has pictures of your truck at the crime scene." To which Keyes, oozing with a smug and neurotic tone, responds, "If they had that, they would have already talked to me." Now, to save some time on things, after this, Keyes is led to federal prison to wait arraignment the next day. Dahl and Bell are scrambling to make it out of Anchorage and down to Texas. James Koenig was asked if he knew anything about Israel Keyes, and he responded that he didn't, and he didn't know any connection this man may have had to his daughter. He was told that Keyes was arrested in relation to the case and to keep things quiet and not go posting on Facebook. Bell and Dahl landed in Houston early on the morning of March 14th and were in the interrogation room with Keyes shortly after 1 p.m.-ish. Dahl slid the ransom note left with Samantha's photo across the table, stating, "Whoever wrote this is a monster. I don't think you're a monster." This is a technique that's typically seen in interrogations to form some type of connection with the perpetrator. Keyes said nothing for a moment before stating, "There's nothing I could do to help you." However, his interest did seem to peak with Dahl. Dahl continued asking, "Well, how do you explain her boyfriend's ATM card in your wallet?" "Oh, now I see how I'm involved with this," Keyes responded and began spinning the story that someone had left a Ziploc bag on his front seat of his pickup truck a few weeks ago. Inside was a cell phone, the ATM card with the pin scratched on it. He then said that he'd left the driver's side window open because he was a smoker, which they'd surely known from his rental. He assumed someone owed him money from his construction work and left the items as payment.
Yeah, that's totally believable.
Right?
Just give me a cell phone, your ATM card.
Yeah, here, help yourself.
I'll just
to the
keep
money.
swiping until we run out of money.
That's right. You just do what you need to do.
This is the only payment I'm going to accept from now on. Just give me your ATM card.
And make sure the pin's on it so I can use it.
Scratch the pin in, please.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need to sign your name on any receipt from me. You just need to give me your ATM card
That works
Just the
fine.
ATM card, please.
Yeah.
with the PIN number.
Yes.
So Dahl responded with the thought that we all just had. That's a ridiculous story. We know you did this. We know you took Samantha.
Thank God she was a gal. She came to the same conclusion. The men were probably sitting there going, that's plausible.
That's plausible.
Yeah.
And we're all like, the
Ew.
fuck?
It doesn't work. God.
That doesn't line up. That's not right. Keyes responded with, I don't know what you're talking about.
What?
Now, Kat Nelson found the website for Keyes' construction business, which included a capsulary biography. According to Keyes, reporting in the biography, he lived in Colville, Washington from 1995 to 1997 and was a contractor there. That put Keyes in the area between the ages of 17 to 19 years old. Remember this for later. The next entry was that Keyes was in the United States Army from 1998 to 2001, stationed in Fort Lewis in Washington, Fort Hood in Texas, and Sinai, Egypt. Keyes passed with distinction in the Army's pre-Ranger course, which is a merciless 61 days of training that typically flushes out half of its recruits in the first week alone. Nelson also found a passport application that put Keyes' birthplace as Utah. However, under the question, have you ever been issued a passport, Keyes wrote, don't remember.
What?
Liar.
I don't remember either.
Do you not remember getting your passport? I do.
I know, exactly. How can you not know that?
It's normally a terrible process that starts with you waiting at the DMV for 10 hours.
I remember my first passport because I had the little, speller, leapfrog speller
Yes.
that I was playing with, and there was this old lady, sitting across from me that was just glaring me down. Apparently the long-term memory's there because I don't have trauma yet. I remember my things as a child. Anything beyond the age of 15 is gone.
Goodbye, thoughts.
Goodbye, thoughts. It was
Bye,
nice
cruel
having you.
world.
We don't need them.
According to the biography and further investigation, he had honorable discharge from the Army in 2001 and moved to a remote part of Washington state for 6 years before moving to Anchorage in 2007. Now, Keyes' mother was interviewed for further information by Ganaway, to which she gave a little more background information on the family's religious, upbringing. However, Keyes himself was not religious, and his atheism was a great tragedy on her life.
What a strange family dynamic. She's like, oh, he's an atheist. He hates his mother.
Well, yeah, but yeah.
It's
Yeah,
coming.
it's
That's
coming.
part 3.
God. You know, at first I was like,
4.
what would inspire a man to do something horrible? And it's like, oh no, he just did not fit in as a child.
Well,
That's all it took.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, he's like, I'm gonna kill all these ladies.
I'm gonna kill all these ladies.
Perfect. This is exactly what I need.
She also said that he'd shown up to her house on February 12th, and that's a rough guess as there's no strict date. She said that this visit had been the weirdest and that there was something wrong with Keyes. Then, sometime between the early morning of February 13th, he snuck out of the house like a teenager. To which I don't know how teenagers sneak out. Do we do
No,
it
you
weird?
just fucking walked out.
I
Because
do.
You had free reign. You were allowed. Sarah, how do people sneak out? Teenagers sneak out.
What did I do one time? I went through my bedroom window, which was on the second story, onto the roof, and then I rolled into some bushes, and I had my friend's mom pick me up on the outside of the neighborhood. I'm not kidding. I literally
that the
looked
night
at the
that you
bushes,
got
I was like,
caught?
I'll land in that. Yeah, that was not good. That was not a good night for me. I was like
I just
14.
remember the saddest voicemail coming through of, Katie, I can't spend the night this weekend. I'm like, what the fuck happened? Did somebody die?
Don't worry about it. My parents didn't want me to do anything. Now we're friends, but my God, my teen years. I couldn't do anything. No one's allowed over. No one's allowed to go anywhere. It's like, okay.
I came over sometimes. Was I the exception? Was I the good egg?
There were a couple of people.
I feel like I was the good egg.
You keep telling yourself that.
Maybe I'm the blinky egg because I'm not exactly right.
You kind of float. You don't drop to the bottom and you don't float on top. You're just kind of in the middle.
They're like,
Yeah, we
we'll
just fucking
tolerate
sit
her
there.
friend.
Yep. You're
They're like,
about
she's
to
in
spiral.
theater with her, and that involves other parents. So if they hear about this,
Yeah.
they're gonna be like, why is your child not allowed out?
He'd left a note saying that he was going to fix a window and hide his guns. The window was referring to the rental vehicle that he was driving. However, it's unclear if anything had happened to that vehicle. Now, there's a couple of loose connections with the family and Keyes for the next couple days, with him basically wanting help getting his vehicle out of the mud and him going completely radio silent when the family asked him for his location. It wasn't until the 15th, when Keyes contacted them after running out of gas, did they see him again. He was transported back to Anchorage by U.S. Marshals on March 30th, and Payne had gained news that Keyes was ready to talk. But he had two demands at the time. Keyes wanted the death penalty off the table, and the second one is that he wanted very little information released to the media, as he didn't want his child to know about anything going on. Now, the team, Payne, Bell, Godin, and Nelson, all met to discuss their approach about how they would do this first sit-down with Keyes. Dahl had to miss this as she was away at the time, but she planned to sit in on a conference call. Unfortunately, the top federal prosecutor's office in Alaska had other ideas. Israel Keyes was to be interrogated at the U.S. Attorney's Office, not the FBI office, and by Kevin Feldis, who would be leading the interview alongside his deputy, Frank Russo. The FBI would simply be his backup. Now, there are a list of things that are wrong with this. Now, this is prosecutorial misconduct, meaning that if it was discovered by the U.S. court systems, the case would be thrown out. Second, the office of the U.S. Attorney was not established with the same high-tech CCTV recording and other recording equipment that the FBI office had. Third, a prosecutor cannot elicit a confession the same way an officer can, meaning all leverage that's typically used to distract, distress any individual who may want to deal with the prosecutor's office cannot be used, as the prosecutor is in the room. So, you may be asking yourself, why is this being permitted?
Why is this being permitted?
Well,
What's going on?
you want the prosecution on your side, and from what I could discover, Feldis was the only prosecutor in Anchorage.
Oh, okay, I get it. So they can't just bully him.
Nope.
Wait, no, you did it.
At 5:48 p.m., March 30th, the team sat down with Keyes in the U.S. Attorney's office. Bell sat a small tape recorder on the table and hit play, and the story began. Shortly after 7 p.m. on February 1st of 2012, Israel Keyes pulled his white Chevy truck out of his driveway and drove to the Home Depot on Tudor Road, 15 minutes away. He'd made a similar drive several other times earlier that week, curious about the comings and goings around the Common Grounds coffee kiosk. After several nights of watching, Keyes decided he was going to rob it. But he'd wait until closing time, so there's no other customers. Keyes' first stop was at Carr's grocery store, where he picked up a Snickers bar and Wild and Mild cigars, then made his way back to the Home Depot parking lot and parked closer to the IHOP that shared the lot. He then grabbed his coffee mug, a pair of plastic zip ties, headlamp, and a .22 Taurus revolver. He wore a tiny police scanner in his ear, got out of the truck, and walked west across the street towards the kiosk. He wandered the parking lot for a few minutes to ensure that nobody else was there. At this point, investigators stopped him, asking what his connection to Samantha was, like how'd he met her. Never met her. Never even seen her before, Keyes said. The team, to say the least, was pretty surprised by this. They proceeded to ask why he chose Common Grounds, because they're open late. Keyes then paused and wanted to see the evidence that they had. Now, this exchange is rather painful to go through as the prosecutor treads a very thin line with this evidence. He basically told Keyes not all the photos were printed off. This had much of the investigating team anxious, and Feltus asked if Keyes would prefer telling his story backwards. Keyes said that he could do that, but he didn't know if he was going to go into the story blow by blow. He then asked them to pull up a map of the Palmer area. He then started to point out they'd probably had found proof of another shack on his property, and they'd probably already found evidence in one of his sheds. This confused people as there were only 2 shacks on the property, but it seemed like he was talking about a whole new one entirely. He then goes forward to say that on the first day of ice fishing, he drove down to the Manitousca Lake, parked off the highway, and dragged his sled across the surface of the ice, set up his little shack out in the middle, and cut an 8x8 hole in the ice, covered it with plywood, and left. Keyes mentioned how he had his truck that day, and they don't let you park down by the lake. I couldn't pull more than about, maybe 150 pounds at a time in the sled, so that's why I had to make 3 trips. And you're going to need 5 different bags. Feltus asked what was in each of the trips that he made down there. Keyes responds with, the first day was the head, legs, and arms. Feltus responded with, of Samantha Koenig. Keyes responds, yeah. Feltus pulled up a Google Earth street view of the Keyes home, to which Keyes was impressed and chuckled at how recent the photos were. Keyes showed around the back of the house and where they could find the gray conduit he used to pull the sled, the wood for the building of the ice shack, the steel bar used to cut the hole in the ice, a serrated utility knife with a yellow handle, and the blood on the floor and wall of one of the sheds now sitting in his driveway. So there was another shed, which was now dismantled. Feltus decided to plow on with this confession and started showing photos of stuff the FBI had seized from the wrong shed. Keyes was flustered, noting how the photos of the items were from the wrong shed, to which he said, "Did I just tell you guys all this for nothing?" To which, yes, Keyes, yes, you did. He does go on to play this off as a joke, probably for Keyes' own sanity, because I don't think he could believe that investigators missed that much.
Wow. He's like, LOL.
This isn't real.
I'm just kidding, guys. You thought that was real? Oh my god, no. Oh, not my shed. Oh, yeah, that was my normal shed. I mean, my only shed.
My only shed.
One.
God, I was just pulling you guys' leg. You believe that?
Oh my god, you really are dipshits. Yes, they really
God. Oh my god.
So Payne and Bell tried to get Keyes back to establishing a timeline for Samantha again, to which Keyes continued his side of the story, talking somewhat in a trance. He walked around the Common Grounds kiosk, although he was unable to see who was working inside. They presumed it was a young girl. She either didn't have a car or wasn't parked close by. He then walked to the window, sat down his thermos, and asked for an Americano when he got a good look at her. Young, pretty thing, working alone, Samantha Koenig. As she was making his drink, he stood at the window, running the plan through his head. There was a hitch in his plan, though, as there was a car that was idling nearby. Somebody was watching him, making his plan more challenging to go through. Samantha handed his thermos over, and he pulled a gun on her. "This is a robbery," he stated. Samantha put her hands in the air, terrified. "Turn off the lights," Keyes instructed. She didn't scream. She flicked off the lights and ran back to the trailer to get the last set of them before returning to the window. She didn't hit the panic button during that time, as Keyes would have heard it in his earpiece. Keyes instructed her to give him all the cash in the register. After she'd emptied it, he then told her to get on the floor. Keys broke focus at this point to tell the room that he was feeling invincible. She was scared and doing everything he said. He wanted to see where it would go. He then shifted back into this altered state trance thing that he has going. He then waited, and as the idling car finally drove off, Keys told Samantha to get on her knees, and he bound her wrists with zip ties, then proceeded to jump through the window. He asked her where her car was, and she responded with, "I don't have one, but my dad's coming to get me in a half an hour. I mean, he's going to be here any minute." This made Keys pause for a minute, as he didn't know which was the truth. "Did you hit an alarm? Don't lie to me. I have a police scanner in my ear, I'll know." "No," Samantha replies. "If I hear police being dispatched here, I'll kill you," Keys said. "I didn't, I swear," Samantha responds. During this point, investigators make mention of how Keys' tone changes, and he started to sound both ashamed and enraptured while his voice deepened and went quieter. He then took a moment to ask her name, shut the windows, bar them, and took some napkins and shoved them in her mouth. He then said that they were going for a little walk.
Can we scream at this point? Never let them take you to another location. It's true.
It's true. Don't go with them to a second location.
Fight. If they're going to kill you, let them kill you right there.
What was it? You're supposed to run in a zigzag pattern, right? Like with alligators?
Well, my thing is
Keys is not an alligator.
That doesn't matter.
It's
basically a reptile.
I would have stayed there in the fucking dark. Find me, motherfucker.
Yeah, that's
Find
my
me.
side too. But you gotta remember, she's a young girl. She's scared.
Yes.
She doesn't really want to probably get killed. She's just doing what he says to hopefully appease him so he'll go the fuck away.
Yeah.
Well, she's probably still thinking it's just a robbery, you know?
That too.
She probably has no idea what's going on.
So, as Keys led Samantha out the back door and across the parking lot, he found a Canon camera in newish condition on the ground. It had to be worth a couple $100s, so he took it as a good omen and bent over to pick it up, and that's when Samantha broke free and ran. He tackled her and regained control by pressing the .22 against her ribs, threatening to kill her if she tried to escape again. Samantha nodded, and Keys told her to stumble around a bit and lean into him like she was drunk. Keys then took her back to his truck, where a few people were lingering around a Chevy Suburban right in front of his vehicle. He now relied on the fear that he'd sowed into her to keep her quiet. He cleared off the clutter in his passenger seat as Samantha watched the strangers in front of her clamber into the Chevy and drive away. He then put her in the truck, placed a seatbelt around her, and went around to the driver's side. He told her that they were going for a little drive and that he was going to hold her for ransom and that she'd be fine, pulling the napkins out of her mouth. Samantha insisted that her family did not have any money, but Keys persisted that the community will come together and they will get it. Keys drove out of the parking lot and notes in the interview that in the drive to the secondary location, a patrol car stopped next to them at a red light. Samantha seemed to be working out her options, and Keys was working out on what he could do when the light turned green and the patrol car pulled away. He then drove to an undisclosed park in Lynn Airy, supposedly down by its baseball fields. There were apparently some witnesses here, giving Samantha yet another attempt to escape, but she sat quietly in the truck, watching the cross-country skiers load up their car and drive away. Keys waited a minute to make sure that they wouldn't double back before going to the back of his vehicle and pulling all of his tools out of the back seat and tossing them into the truck bed. He then covered the seat with drop cloths and tucked them in. This was a way to limit the amount of DNA transferred into his vehicle from Samantha. Keys then laid her down in the back seat and secured her wrist to the seatbelt and covered her with the drop cloths. Keys got back into the driver's seat and started thinking of what to do next. It was closing in on 11 p.m. when he decided to grab a burner phone from Walmart. He needed to make the ransom demand. Upon arriving at the parking lot, He had second thoughts and decided it would be better for him to return to the kiosk and grab Samantha's phone. He threatened Samantha again when he got out of his vehicle, stating that if she looks like she's been trying to do anything, he wasn't going to be happy. Keyes went back into the kiosk and grabbed Samantha's cell phone, then noticed a few stray zip ties on the floor, grabbing those too. Leaving the kiosk, he remembered that Samantha's keys were still there, so he figured he would need those too. He went back and grabbed them before leaving the kiosk a third and final time. Keyes sent text messages to people who'd been calling Samantha, her boyfriend, and her boss. He wrote them as if Samantha was incredibly pissed off. After that, he pulled out the battery from the phone so it couldn't be tracked. Finally, Keyes drove into his driveway around midnight now. According to him, it's not clear if he's boasting now or if there really are neighbors outside at this time walking their dogs, but apparently there were some neighbors outside walking their dogs. So he left Samantha in the truck while he put his tool rack back on the tail end of the truck. When the coast was finally clear, Keyes moved Samantha to the third shed that was on his property. It had already been set up with 2 heaters and a big tarp with a radio going around 1 to 2 a.m. Once she was now inside the shed, Keyes said that he was going to make her comfortable, but to remember that he had a police scanner in his ear. So if he gets any information about a disturbance over here, he's going to be back before the cops would get there. He then turned up the radio, drowning out any noise that she could possibly make with heavy metal music. He then asked Samantha about her ATM card that she shared with Dwayne. She told him that it was in their truck and either in the glove box or the visor. He then told Samantha to give her her home address in the description of the truck she and Dwayne shared. Keyes checked on his girlfriend, who was now finally asleep at 2:30 a.m. It was just 2.5 hours before Keyes and his daughter needed to leave. He then took his girlfriend's vehicle to Samantha's house, parked a few blocks away, and walked over to the truck, checking the passenger's door, which he used the keys to unlock. The card was right where she said it would be. And he was getting ready to leave when Dwayne came out. Not knowing what this guy might do, Keyes stood there for a moment. He had a knife on him, and he'd use it. When suddenly, the man turned around and went back inside. Now, I'm going to pause here for a moment because there is discussion that he was thinking about taking Dwayne too.
So there's some stuff that he does where it's like it seems so smart, but this dude is so... I don't know if I want to say lucky that he didn't get caught. Like this whole time, he returns to the scene of the crime. Like an idiot.
Like an idiot.
Like you're not supposed to do that. It's like rule number 1. You don't go back. Right? Like... I don't know, but he was smart to go back for the keys, but like this whole time, he goes to Dwayne's the dad, right?
No, the boyfriend.
Dwayne's the boyfriend.
The boyfriend, yeah, but still, it's like he goes to get that, and it's like, oh, it's a miracle that nothing happened.
What I read, he actually was planning on taking them both at the same time, but because Dwayne didn't show up, he went ahead and just took her. But then he saw his chance
Weird.
there when he was getting into the truck, and then the guy went back in the house, so he figured, I've pressed my luck fine enough, I'm good to go. Which...
That's wild.
Yeah, to say the least.
That's so wild.
So Keyes made his way to the ATM after this, but forgot to ask Sam for her PIN number, so he had to go back to the house and ask her for it. He scratched the PIN on the front of the card and went back to check it. 94 cents. Was all that was in the account. Keyes returned to the house around 3 a.m. and scheduled a ride at 5 a.m. sharp for his trip with his daughter. He then made the comment that he was running late and laughed as he did. Payne and Bell strategized for a moment and shifted to the proof of life copy of the ransom photo and the note that was posted in the Anchorage Daily News dated for February 13th. Is she alive in this photo? Feldes asked. Nope. Keyes responded. Was she alive when you got back from your trip on the 18th? Nope. Was she alive when you left? When I left? No. After this, Keyes decided that he didn't want to talk anymore, and specifically wanted to tell the rest of the story to Dahl and only Dahl. Additionally, he had other demands for the rest of the details regarding Samantha's death. The first was that he didn't want his girlfriend's house torn apart anymore, and she was not to be talked to about this as she had nothing to do with it. Stating specifically, obviously, you have no reason to trust me, but I can tell you right now, there is no one who knows me or has ever really known me. I'm two different people. And the only person who knows about what I'm telling you is me. Russo asked Keyes, "How long have you been two different people?" Keyes responded, "A long time, 14 years. Dahl returned to Anchorage on April 1st and sat across from Keyes as he continued the story back in the shed. He'd prepared the space a couple days earlier. He had no specific person or plan in mind, but he had looked around the Huffman area for some time because it was full of coffee stands and they were open late and staffed mostly by young teenage girls. When he got back from stealing the ATM card, Samantha was composed. She asked if everything had worked out and if he'd reached her dad. Keyes said everything had worked out fine, knelt down and unscrewed the rope from the wall, cutting her cable and ties too, allowing her a possible moment to believe that she was being set free as he promised, before restraining her again. Different from the previous day, he said that he had left the shack to check on his girlfriend, who was still awake, before returning back to the shed. He raped Samantha twice. She asked if he was going to kill her, and he didn't respond. He put on a pair of leather gloves and began to strangle her. He then stabbed her once below the right shoulder blade and returned into the house to shower. Keyes then woke his daughter, and while she got ready, he returned to the shed again. The space heaters were left on to slow rigor mortis from setting in, and he rolled Samantha's body into a tarp and hid her remains in one of the lower cabinets. He then turned the heaters off, double-locked the shed, and called a cab. Feldes asked, "What was your plan? You were getting on a plane and her body was in your shed? What were you thinking?" Keyes responded with, "I was thinking it was 20 degrees outside, and I didn't have anything to worry about." Moreover, he knew how the police would respond. He'd been listening to the scanner a lot recently and stated that it felt like the time anyone figured out what had actually happened, the trail would have already gone cold. When Keyes returned from his trip, he went into the shed to assess the body. He began taking the shed apart from the inside on February 21st, dismantling cabinets, shelvings, lights, and chopping everything into firewood. By February 22nd at 1 to 2 a.m., he built a fire in the living room fireplace and burnt everything that she had touched. Back in the shed, Keyes took a large piece of plastic and tacked it on the floor and the walls before lifting her body up into the air with a pulley system with ropes basically tied around her wrists.
Trigger warning, necrophilia.
He then proceeded to thaw the remains and have sex with them.
Ew.
Yeah, we didn't do that trigger, honey.
Oh, trigger warning, necrophilia.
Jesus Christ.
Sorry, folks.
Let me
folks.
just kick the heater back on, I guess. It's like, oh my god. Ugh. Ugh. I just gotta shake it out. It's fucking nasty. Nasty.
His daughter came knocking at the shed door, looking for him at some time. It wasn't disclosed if it was during the necrophilia or after, but it was morning now. So he told her to go eat breakfast, and he'd be in a minute. Keyes cleaned himself up and went inside to get his daughter ready for school. Once she had gone, it was time to establish the ransom note. At some time, he'd also gone to get tote bags from Home Depot, a carbon ink ribbon, and paper for a typewriter he'd found at Goodwill, a sewing kit, and a 10-pound fishing line. During this outing, he also pulled a copy of the Anchorage Daily News dated for February 13th, 2012 from the Carr's supermarket dumpster. Dahl asked him why he chose the 13th, and Keyes stated that he wasn't in Anchorage on the 13th. After this, he went back to the shed, taking his girlfriend's and Samantha's makeup and used the rest of the night to get some makeup on Samantha's face. However, makeup wasn't giving the expression that Keyes wanted for the ransom photo. She had been dead for nearly 21 days at this point, and her skin was starting to slack.
Yeah.
Ugh. That definitely explains her mouth in the photo.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at the photo, there's actually like a shiny like residue over top of it too. He says that he taped her mouth shut, and we'll get to that here in a second. But I'm presuming what he was really trying to do with that, it looks like it's just Packer's tape. So my presumption is that there's skin slippage from the decay. So he's using that to kind of give her a facelift up.
Ugh.
He tried super glue first, but that didn't work. So he moved on to needles and thread, using a big curved needle and some fishing line to sew her eyes open. He then held her head back and took test pictures before finally coming to the one that he liked. He cut the corners off because his arm was showing an identifying mark. He then placed the photo at the park under the photo of the lost dog, around 6 a.m., and sent the message to Samantha's boyfriend. Then, over the course of 3 separate days, Samantha's body was taken to Manitousca Lake and disposed of. Keyes' initial confession was marked for March 30th, and a FBI dive team was reached out to investigate the claims of Samantha's body being in Manitousca Lake. The team landed in Anchorage that Sunday afternoon and were greeted by many signs flooding the community of, "We're praying for you, Samantha." On April 2nd, the dive team began setting up around noon, cutting a hole in the 3-foot thick ice and dropping a sonar in to get a sense of the lake's bottom. Like Keyes had said, 5 distinct objects pinged as targets. They then sent down a 4-propeller ROV, which could transmit images back to the team on the surface. Once at the lake's floor, it immediately hit something, a foot. It was at 4:42 when the team began to set up and conduct the recovery, and by 7 p.m., the team was in the water, taking upwards to 15 minutes to reach the bottom of the lake where Samantha's remains had been wired and weighed down to ensure that they would not resurface. Each of the remains was found in close proximity to the other, and after waiting for the white pop-up shelter to shield the media's view, waterproof chain of custody forms were filed, and by 9 p.m., people began to leave the scene. The FBI dive team had only been in town for roughly 36 hours, and they watched the signs change to "Our warmest condolences for the Koenig family." Samantha's body had been recovered and her story had been told. The community focused its emotion and attention on James and Dwayne in memorializing Samantha's all-too-short life. For investigators, this was just the beginning. As Keyes told them, "I've got loads more stories to tell."
Jesus.
Yeah.
The APD had collected several metal filing cabinets from Keyes' basement during the search with travel records, receipts, tax filings. Keyes told investigators that he'd used a laptop, which was his, and his girlfriend's tower. There had been a third at one point, but he smashed it with a hammer and had taken it to the landfill shortly after Samantha's murder. There was low hopes for the tower holding any evidence, as Keyes was careful and calculating. However, when they opened his laptop and began searching, one by one, they popped up. Hundreds of faces. Men, women, children, middle-aged and old, white, African American, mixed races, slim and overweight. Some looked affluent, others looked addicted, and possibly sex workers. Among these photos were pictures of Samantha taken directly from her Facebook. This information was sent to Armin Showalter, one of the top criminal profilers in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And even though he was at a loss for words, his best advice to the team was to keep Keyes talking. Now, just as a reminder, since we haven't talked about it in a minute, it's not illegal for adults to be reported missing in the United States. So there's really no way to tell if Keyes is just interested in missing persons cases or if this is a possible catalog of his victims. Keyes was prepared and willing to have more conversations moving forward, saying, like I say, I'm happy to help, but it's on my terms. I'm not in this for the glory. I'm not trying to be on TV. He also had new conditions that he expected to be met. On April 6th of 2012, the team once again gathered in the interrogation room when Keyes announced that he wanted an execution date, contrary to his original demand of the death penalty being off the table. His reasoning behind this was that he wanted all of this wrapped up in a year, to have his children grow up without this hanging over their heads, and for the police to not continuously come back asking for more information, stating, I'll tell you everything, give you, plead guilty to whatever. I'll give you every gory detail you want, but that's what I want. The group didn't want to make this deal before gaining more information. Samantha's case hadn't been enough. They needed another body. Keyes initially declined this push, but once Payne started discussing the FBI playbook, which involves reaching out to multiple field offices and making moves that would land him in the media for sure, Keyes frustratedly replied with, all right, I'll give you 2 bodies. 2 bodies and a name. And that's where we're going to end part 2.
Oh my god.
Monster! Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah.
That's just the case that ended him. Holy shit.
And you know what? He probably would have never really gotten caught if he hadn't fucked up and
So
admitted
badly.
to it. Because he was thorough.
He was thorough. He was very meticulous about his process of what he did. But the fact that he came in and he was kind of like, all right, well, they already got me. It kind of makes me believe in a way that he wanted to be done.
Well, he was escalating.
He was escalating.
And escalating at a big fucking clip. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm with Katie on that one. I really, 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 really think in his mind, if he hadn't been caught, it was game on. He would never get caught.
Thank you again for listening to Spattered. Please make sure to follow the show on Facebook and Instagram at Spattered Podcast and on X at Spattered Pod. If you're enjoying the show, make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts from. If you're watching on YouTube, like this video, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to be notified when the show goes live or drops a video. As always, if you have a case request, any questions, or are interested in sponsoring the show, please email me at spatteredpodcast@gmail.com. Spattered is a true crime podcast hosted by Caitlin Gardner and Sarah Ray. The research and edits for this episode were done by Caitlin Gardner. All the music for the show was done by Lucio Cardenas. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there. And remember, the truth is always in the blood.